best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
What's the top story for this week? You might think it is the Ukraine, the Crimea, and what's going on there, but the fact is you'd be wrong. And here to talk about it is Andrew Hoffman for our Monday discussion. Andy, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me, as always.
Hey, so what's the top story for today?
Oh, well, it's China, of course. It's amazing how so many people like to believe that they're this amazingly run capitalist society and they figured out all of the world's economic ills, when the fact is that they've created the largest credit bubble in the history of mankind, the largest real estate and construction bubble, and it's all starting to fall apart on them right now.
Well, Andy, here's the deal. Central planners, whether they come from the U.S., whether they come from the Soviet Union, now known as the Russian Republic, or whether they come from China, they're going to screw things up. They're going to cause malinvestment because the fact is central planning doesn't work no matter who's doing it. Take your pick, choose your poison. Right? It doesn't work no matter who does it.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a world which now has 7+ billion people, there's really no way of creating a system where everyone does well. There's going to be people that fall by the wayside. And as you say, trying to centrally plan for billions of people, the misallocations become even more catastrophic. And yes, they were smart, the Chinese government in the recent decade or two, to say, look, we need to get the manufacturing jobs over here because we need to feed our people. And it's easy to do since, A, we have cheap labor, and B, the American companies are dying to come over here, and their stupid government is happy to let them to send the jobs over here. So, okay, they got the jobs, that's great, but what they've done is they fostered overproduction and over credit of everything. Unfortunately, they were smart enough to take some of those profits and buy real items of value like gold and silver, but they still are not going to be able to feed all their people now that this credit bubble that they've created is collapsing. And the big news over the weekend, what we're talking about, was they widened the daily trading band on the yuan to the dollar. Remember, it's pegged from 1% to 2%. Now, we've been writing here for several weeks about what they're doing. One, we wrote a piece called "The Most Terrifying Article We've Ever Read About the Chinese Real Estate Bubble, Which is Collapsing." 2, Chinese financial torture, about all the derivatives that have been placed by Western banks betting that the yuan will never go down. And of course, the one last week called Dr. Death, referring to copper, Dr. Copper, where the prices are now collapsing along with iron ore because construction activity as a result of the shadow banking collapse going on in China is grounding to a halt. So you put all these things together and you have major ripple effects throughout the world. The currency wars only get worse. And of course, with Janet Yellen getting ready for her first FOMC meeting on Wednesday, the pressure is going to start to really rise for her to pause and or reverse tapering, especially with this Ukraine wild card out there.
Hey, and you know what I so enjoy, Andy, is hearing people tell me that China is holding all this gold and they're going to go to a convertible yuan. And and I know it ain't ever going to happen until there's literally a gun at their heads, because it's too much fun to be a central planner and tell people what to do and when to do it and invest this and do that. It's not going to happen. I love when people tell me this. Oh, yeah, bills of trade backed by gold. And no, because you'd much rather print up worthless paper and pay people for it with it.
Yeah, we've talked about this for a long time. I mean, the fact is, when there is a new gold-backed currency, it's not going to be because the central planners got together in a meeting in Brussels or Vienna or Beijing and decided this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be because the markets absolutely overwhelm their paper system, causing great economic cataclysm, and obviously with it social unrest, the draconian government decrees, military actions, all those kind of things. And the current Chinese government is not going to be the one that gets to benefit from the new system. It's going to drive everyone out like a tsunami, including the Chinese government. And they, like our government, has no desire for the current system to end. Of course, they know it's going to end, and they're smartly acquiring gold and silver and other things too, oil, cotton, rice paddies, you name it, everything they can to get rid of their dollars. I mean, they basically said in November, it is no longer in our interest to accumulate foreign exchange reserves. And we know that in December, they sold, I think it was $50 billion of treasuries alone. So clearly, we know what they are doing with their reserves, but there's no plan on the table to do this. When the markets collapse and people just flee out of paper currencies, they will be the last ones standing, but it's going to be after. When you talk about rising from the ashes, there's going to be some serious ashes in China just as well as in the Western world.
Yeah, so you just have to understand that, this brilliant plan is no brilliant plan here. Yeah, they've done a lot of things right, but, what's happening now is all as a result of these central planners, because if they had been smart, they would have let the yuan float and they would have allowed it to become a really strong currency and allowed their population to enjoy the fruits of their labor and to buy up the world's production at a discount and boost their living standards that way. That would have been the smart thing to do, not to strengthen the government and allow the kleptocracy to basically take over and become multi-billionaires and maybe trillionaires for all you know.
Well, look, China's history is among the saddest of any nations out there. It's just been so secular. People don't even realize what's going on there. They've had so much central planning and dynasties and kings and paper currencies and all those things. The one thing that they haven't done over the years is they haven't invaded. They've not been imperialistic. But internally, there's no country that's killed more of their own citizens or had more civil wars and unrest and collapsed currencies and misery and poverty than China. And, as you said, the best thing that they could do, just like the U.S. and everyone else, is just to let markets be. There's always going to be people, the strong survive, the weakest don't. You're not going to ever be able to pay for everyone, and certainly not to get all of their votes. But that's what governments do. And that's what people have let governments do for years. They let them make these decisions which make things exponentially worse. When you look at a shadow banking system in China, what that means is loans being made by non-banking entities that has not only gotten to $23 trillion, which is bigger than the U.S. national debt, but most of it has occurred in the last 5 years. The government has fostered this while the world economies have been falling apart. And they've been printing just as much money as anyone else to help do that. It shows you just how insane what the government planners will do just to get a couple of years of seeming growth and cushy four-star resorts wherever they go. Because what's about to happen in China in the next couple of years is going to make what's happening in the West look like nothing. I now believe it's the East that's going to cause the world's economy to implode first before the West.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, it obviously would have been the opposite, wouldn't it have?
Yeah, because again, just like everything that goes on in the West, what's going on there is a mirage also. When you look and you see that what they call total social financing, which is the equivalent of money printing, and you see numbers came out that show that the PBOC, the People's Bank of China, printed almost 3 times as much money in January as the Fed and the Bank of Japan combined. Now, part of that, obviously, is to maintain this insane peg of the dollar, which has caused all these economic misallocations, including the loss of all the jobs in America that are never coming back. I mean, it's created all of these things, and then this bubble in real estate and construction, which has to collapse. And again, I saw that bubble and I was there last summer. It really was a sight to behold. When you take a train from Hong Kong out to Guangzhou, which is, I don't know, an hour and a half, and along the entire way, there was not one spot on the route where there weren't giant buildings going up, most of them without, people ready to buy them. And it shows you what is about to happen over there.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling. But, leave it to the government, right? Isn't this what the government always does, no matter whose government it is? And to think that their government so much smarter than your government, why would you think that for a moment?
Well, look, you give the government a job and they'll do it, just like you ask someone for an opinion and they'll give it. And people have allowed governments to do this. It's kind of like when Nixon went off the gold standard. And I hate to say Nixon. It was the government that did it. All the other countries in the world just let it happen. I mean, it's not like anyone was complaining. Just like when the government decrees we're going to get bigger, people don't complain. They just let it happen. And of course, it goes hand in hand with allowing central banks to create these Ponzi schemes, which cause economies to weaken and an increased dependency on the government. In which case, they not only don't care, they want the government to get bigger. But again, in this vicious loop, the bigger they get, the more they cause misallocations. And ultimately, every one of these systems collapses. You can talk about the greatest of all time, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, or you can look at the Germans or the Zimbabweans or Venezuelans. It's always the same when you allow the governments to print their own money.
Yep. And it was just having that conversation with someone else, looking at the Constitution, what it says about this, about printing money, and why it's so dangerous, and about the upcoming Bitcoin exchanges in New York State. We're going to talk more about that up next on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com.
FSN Radio.
Urgent alert. Ex-Secret Service agent claims it's worse than people know. One of Obama's former Secret Service agents recently smelled a rat. What he discovered inside our government was so devastating, he only saw one option. He quit. What's worse, he fears what he found could affect your job, your neighborhood, and most importantly, your family, very soon. It's worse than people know, he said in a recent interview, and I'm not trying to scare you either. We too share his concerns. This is why we've devoted the better part of 3 years collecting solutions for nearly all problems created by intrusive governments, and we've succeeded. Go to hiddensecrets1.info to check out all the details. Our panel of insiders have devised a legal but sneaky set of solutions to help you reclaim your privacy from the NSA, opt out of Obamacare, and make a bundle from little-known investments and small business opportunities. Simply visit hiddensecrets1.info. That's hiddensecrets1.info. When your accountant wants tax-free income, this is what he does. Accountants know the law. They also know that any American could legally get paid up to 3 times per month, 100% tax-free. That's 36 tax-free checks each year. It doesn't matter what you make already. This simple strategy could work for anyone. Go to www.irsrevenge2.com to learn how. That's irsrevenge2.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And we're back. We're with Andrew Hoffman. Andy, so much stuff going on. Luckily, we're blessed because the Congress was out of town for a little bit, huh?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why the whole sanction thing is going to be pushed into next week. I mean, the big sanctions, because they, of course, take vacations during budget crises, during Russian-Ukrainian crises. Always have to have vacation.
It's important, especially, at the worst possible times, right?
Yeah, work so hard. They definitely deserve it.
Yeah, they deserve a lot more, like a permanent vacation. Basically, just give them off, vote them all out. If you bother voting, I subscribe to PJ O'Rourke's theory on this matter. Don't vote. It only encourages the bastards, right?
Well, who are you going to vote in? I mean, if they had an election in November where they said we're gonna have every seat up for election in the Senate and the Congress, and the current incumbents are not allowed to be in it, and we got a whole new bunch of people, how would anything change? I mean, again, these people, their job is to get elected, and their job is to stay in power. not to do what's right. And again, the most important thing, what's right is not going to help it. I'm so tired of when people say, well, if we just did this, things would be better. No, there is nothing to do. At some point, you pass the point of no return, and we passed it a long, long time ago. So right now, if I were in the government, I would be doing the same things, just trying to keep things going and let it break on someone else's watch, because there's no way of fixing it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is all too true. And certainly the way to fix it long term would make things awful in the short term, and elections happen in the short and medium term. Nobody has the stomach for this, Andy.
And again, there's no stomach to do it. I mean, you could say, again, it's like austerity. Okay, well, let's cut spending. Well, how do you cut spending in a dependency nation? I mean, it's an impossible thing to do. You will immediately, again, when you have Walmart, which just said that our sales were much lower than expected because of the slight reduction in the food stamps entitlement program, what does that tell you? They're the biggest retailer in the world. McDonald's just reported their first same-store sale declines in, I don't know, decades. I mean, people are not going to Walmart and McDonald's. So how are you going to say, well, we'll cut spending and that'll somehow be better? It'll just cause a plummet in the economy and tax revenues, in GDP and all those things. There's nothing to do except take your medicine. And in this case, the disease has gotten so bad because it's been allowed to fester for so long that the medicine will literally kill the patient. It's like giving him, giving a cocaine addict heroin.
Yeah, or a mixture of the two. Yeah, there was a time like in 1920, where tremendous recession hit, and they cut back government spending 50% and cut taxes even more. And that was enough to take the economy out of the tailspin. But when most people are in the dependency economy, that's probably not going to have a good outcome.
And again, I mean, look, it's always good to cut taxes, right? I mean, there's nothing good about taxes. If we had no taxes at all, or just enough to pay for the police, and assume that they're not misappropriated, that would be the best thing. But think about a government that has $17 trillion of debt that's rising by $1 trillion a year, saying they're going to cut taxes. I mean, how are they going to fund anything if they have no taxes coming? And they create this vicious loop which can never be escaped from.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And
now they have Obamacare on top of that. So,
yeah, something's got to give.
Yeah.
But something is going to give. You know that, right?
Of course, just a matter of when. It's hard to believe we'll get through another year. I've said that before, but each year the issues are exponentially worse. And now, again, you talk about the reasons they're able to do this by holding gold and silver prices down. They kind of keep the masses at bay from fearing their fiat currency, but it's going mainstream now. It's everywhere. The Germans are talking about it. The Bloomberg is talking about it. There's all these. They're suing Deutsche Bank and the members of the London Fix. The whole world is starting to understand that the markets aren't real. So, and now you're talking about in gold and silver in particular. You're talking about plunging supply, soaring physical demand. I mean, yeah, something's going to give. And how much longer will it be before it gives? And will it be a black swan that does it like Ukraine? Or will it just do it because it does it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one listens to Janet Yellen anymore or Mario Draghi and realizes they have no idea what they're doing. And the only thing that they can and ever will do is print money.
Yeah, and that is not a long-term recipe for success and prosperity in the world. No way. Hey, by the way, there was another Chinese default, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's the second one. They, when the shadow banking thing first started to fall apart a few weeks ago, they bailed a couple out, but now two of them are gone, and there's a whole bunch more coming. But more importantly, what I read was the incremental credit in that shadow banking industry, I think was last week or last month, was zero. And it was growing at $150 billion per month, and it went to zero, meaning all of a sudden the the whole business shut down. No one is lending money for new real estate anymore, real estate construction. So you're going to see a lot more defaults, and equally importantly, you're going to see a lot less industrial demand. That's why, per my piece, Dr. Death, copper prices just plunged through $3 support like it wasn't there. Iron ore prices are collapsing. Inventories are surging. The The Baltic Dry Index just had its worst single day last week in like 5 years or 7 years. So, this ripples across the entire world when you have this major source of industrial demand just collapse into nothing. And it will collapse. It's not going to just fall. It's going to be a complete annihilation, as I believe that this is going to make our housing collapse look like nothing. And
this is exactly what happened in the United States in 1929. From 1929 to 1933-34, industrial demand literally vaporized. And when I say EBT cards for China, I'm not kidding. I really believe that's what's going to happen, because that will be the price of stopping revolution.
Yeah, and the retail public, as you know, in China, they love to gamble. The retail public have all their money in speculative real estate projects. That's what they do. It's no different than what Americans did in 1999 when they had any free money, they would put it in internet stocks. It was the exact same mindset back then, except for Chinese today, it's real estate construction projects.
Oh, prospectus. Oh, yeah. I read prospectus. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like they read prospectuses like Americans read them, right? Because they mean nothing.
Prospectuses for a real estate construction project. I mean, people line up to buy into condos the day that they go on sale without any potential for people actually buying them.
You know why, Andy? You know why they do? Because real estate always goes up, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm telling you, they will be handing out EBT cards in China. People laugh at me when I say that. Oh, no, it's not a welfare state in China. Everybody pulls their own weight. But when the leadership gets scared, when they go from 200,000 riots a year to 500,000, they will hand out the EBT cards, because when they cannot possibly survive people starving in the streets there, Andy, you've been there, you know what it's like. When people start starving, that's when governments fall. You saw it with the Arab Spring, you saw it in the Ukraine, you're seeing it all over the world. And the EBT cards are coming to China. This is going to be our best call ever, because, man, in end of this year, middle of next year, they're coming.
Well, they have to. I mean, that is until they're devalued, like our food stamps. I mean, they're not giving out their agriculture like, here's rice that we're giving you. They're saying, here's pieces of paper to buy rice, and they get devalued. Mm-hmm. It's like money. And that's what's going to happen to the SNAP program here as well. It's a very terrifying thought. That's why people need to prepare.
Gold and silver, we're always on it. Anyway, milesfranklin.com, sign up for Andy's newsletter, and go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for our newsletter. Talk to you next week, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Look forward to it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.